Whenever you're setting up a drum kit, just like think about the distance that you have between everything and like what kind of motion you're able to get on the kit. How much up and down are you having to do, and how much side to side or front to back? If you're not having to do much, like you have a minimum amount of motion, that's going to make it so you can conserve your energy, be able to play longer, and be able to play faster and likely with more power than if you are like swinging all around, up and down, front and back, left and right, etc. So if you sit here and work on the stuff that you're not good at, eventually, over time, it will get better. Like I had a drum set teacher, Don Moyle. He said it took him an entire year to get one measure of a groove. One measure until he felt comfortable with it and it like actually sang and was groovy and whatnot. So a lot of younger performers, when they first start playing, they're comparing themselves to people who have been playing for many, many more years. And so they'll often give up way earlier than they need to. But if you can sit with it and have that grit to be able to last for an extended period of time, like just playing terribly, then eventually you will get better over time. You need to figure out like how to analyze your own playing and make refinements and like figure out ways to improve stuff, like creating the system. But if you do that, over time, you will get better. I got a good question on YouTube. How do I build hand speed? Okay, so the honest answer to building hand speed is to play this slow, like ridiculously slow. You'll notice that I spent time playing through something, stretching, massaging, playing faster on it, and then I spent all this period of time just working on flam on one triplet grid, and then finally I chopped out at the very end. Now, if you look at this, when I'm actually playing through this, I'm practicing this at 40, and I'm going up one click at a time. Now we're at 42, and then we're at 44, and then I jump 5 clicks. And so very slowly am I working my way up to faster speeds, and finally by the end, I'm getting up, going by 10s, and I get to a faster speed. The majority of this time, this whole like hour-long stream, was spent practicing stuff slow and really focusing on the technique. That's how you get to play fast. If you want to work on your single speed, so a molar technique is going to involve kind of like a whipping motion with your hands. So when you're doing this, instead of doing all wrist or using all finger where the wrist doesn't move at all, what you'll end up doing is a little bit of a whip right here, a little bit of a pulse in their strokes. So often you'll see like triplets. So you see like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And while they're doing this, you'll notice that they kind of move almost from the elbow, and it kind of follows through with the hands. They're using 1, 2, 3, kind of like this dragging motion where they're pulling up while doing the strokes. This will change the sound quality of it. The left hand, it kind of has this outward motion where you're, again, pulling up and going 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you're putting a little emphasis on it. So stick control with filler. You play this pattern and then you play the exact same pattern, but now you're filling in. Now, the great thing about these play-longs is it allows you to hear whether or not you're playing with perfect interpretation, especially if you're playing it slow. You want to be rhythmically precise, right? Ideally. So playing it at like 40 beats a minute allows you to figure out if you are rhythmically precise or not. So you can practice listening in. This variation of stick control is a 4-2-1 variation. So it does the first pattern 4 times for 4 counts for each one of the patterns. And then you do it for 2 counts, and then you do it for 1 count, which is why it has a 6-4 pattern at the end, because you do it off the right, and then you do it off the left hand. This is a fantastic way of working up your coordination. You can do this on the drum kit by simply making it so that you play, like, let's say the right hand will actually be on the right foot on the bass drum, and then the left sticking will actually be like on the left on the snare or something like that. So you can change up your playing by simply assigning different limbs to different stickings that you see on the screen right here. here. Today's practice session was to gather some information. So I was going up by 5 clicks at a time. You could also go up by 10 clicks at a time, starting at 40 and then maybe moving up to, let's say, a maximum of like 160 or something. You then figure out what changed from 40 to 160, and that gives you data for what to work on with your technique when you come back the next day and just go up 1 click at a time, starting at 40, until you can get all the way back up to 160 and ideally refine things to the point where you fixed whatever the issues were that were changing. Then you could do the same pattern again. You go up 5, 10 clicks at a time and use that as a data gathering to figure out more things to practice, slow, and you slow it back down again. This cycle continues forever and ever as you continue to find more and more things that you can refine with your own playing. So I was playing an exercise with somebody and they're like, hey, put some stutters on that. And I was like, show me what a stutter is. And they're like, and I was like, oh, you mean a cheese? And they're like, no, it's called a stutter. And I was like, okay, play it slow. It's like, okay, that kind of looks like a cheese to me. I was like, can you play like a few of them in a row? And they're like, I swear that's a cheese. So like I had them write it out. They're like, okay, well maybe the part of the country that you're from, that's apparently called a stutter, but over here on these parts, we call it a cheese. Drummers, we got lots of names for the same thing. It's confusing sometimes. When I was really struggling with this pattern, I was using some of the resources. There's 1,200 hours of free drumming content on my website. Like when I couldn't play through this, I just worked on some permutations first. Then when I could actually do some of the permutations and it felt better with the snare drum, I then added in the foot and worked on the foot permutations. Cool. So we got that down. Then I actually started reading through the charts, but I read through it just with the snare reading through it. And then after I got comfortable with that, I read through it with the bass drum. But because like even reading through the snare part was rough, I was just sitting there and playing the check pattern while I was reading through it mentally before I even added in any of the other limbs and playing through it. So that's the process that you can work on. So first start with permutation, then play the independence pattern while reading through it mentally, then add in one more limb and then add in your fourth limb, and then hopefully you'll be able to play this and slowly work it up to play it faster. I've had to like retrain myself to say drum kit instead of drum set. I wrote some kind of academic publication and they're like, well, drum kit's the more popular term. I'm like, really? I've only heard drum set. Maybe that's an Arizona thing. And I trust the person who said it because they also have their PhD in music education, like I do. And their dissertation was actually on the drum kit. So I was like, oh, yeah, you probably know more about that than I do. So it's the exact same pattern that I was playing in the other stick control variation, but now you have to fill in all the notes. All you hear are the hand-to-hand transitions on this. And this is called stick control skeleton. So even though it's written out this way, you play it the way as the other play along.